It's June 23rd, 2022. I did a separate piece just now about the first part of the Eyewitness News, Channel 7, and it said about the Supreme Court ruling in New York. It also has a mention of an SIG 516, which is a Nassau count, an upper. It then, this is her reaction to that original display, which I find it interesting. She says things I never even learned about the ratification of the Constitution in 1788. Really? That's interesting. For those of us that are stuck in some upper class war as a JU, while they conduct themselves as some SU, and I being dragged for decades and concubined. We're not even going to go into that.
Kathy Hochul, speaking late this morning.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking. That they have taken away our right to have reasonable restrictions. We can have restrictions on speech. You can't yell.
Interestingly enough, I have no restrictions on speech that the locals have ever addressed. She claims they can't scream fire. How does a child, teenager, young adult, or midlife crisis looking at her son's future, how does one learn without having to get into trouble what they're socially engineering into these acceptable practices? Because they haven't shared it with my person.
Fire in a crowded theater, but somehow there's no restrictions allowed on the Second Amendment. This is New York. We don't back down. We fight back. And I'm sorry this dark day has come. That we're supposed to go back to what was in place since 1788 when the Constitution of the United States of America was ratified. And I would like to point out to the Supreme Court justices that the only weapons at the time were muskets. I'm prepared to go back to muskets. I don't think they envision the high-capacity assault weapon magazines intended for battlefields.
Now, is that an Elon Musk musket? I'm just curious. Because I'm not quite sure how my entire future got sold out, but I hear they ratified a constitution in something that has a 7 and an 8. It has a second 8, which is really interesting, almost like a swap of 8s. I'm Rh negative. There is no excuse because otherwise it's sex slavery. So now this gets really confusing in actual terms. In why is my life so far off rails? And why were they trying to purposely hurt me as a teenager with no warning, might I add? Going out with what you thought was, going out with the local school children. You want to meet after school? Innocently enough, yeah, let's go. And then all of a sudden winding up in the woods and then on someone's front lawn and not knowing what the hell happened in between. These are not acceptable events for a teenager. Parents should not be accepting of these things. But yet they went on. And then to have my marriage never happen and my children to be concubined all wrong. More problems happening in New York State within this time frame.
As being covered for this, but I guess we're just going to have to disagree.
And moments ago, this tweet from Mayor Eric Adams, quote, put simply, this Supreme Court ruling will put New Yorkers at further risk of gun violence. We have been preparing for this decision and will continue to do everything possible to work with our federal, state, and local partners to protect our city, end quote. The mayor is expected.
So how deep does this conspiracy go, and who's involved? Well, it looks like a lot.
Expected to speak here at City Hall, and when he does, we will carry it live. Now live at City Hall, NJ Burke at Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Thank you, NJ. Joining us now is ABC's senior investigative reporter, Aaron Cattaruzza. Aaron, thanks for joining us. I may have to interrupt you if the mayor drops in right now to go live to him, but so I apologize for that in advance. But spell out for us what this bombshell decision does and does not mean for carrying concealed weapons in this country, not just New York.
David, this resets the entire gun debate in the country and takes it back to history of when the Constitution was written. Justice Thomas, the strict constitutionalist, has the majority here to say that there is now a...
Oh, wait a minute. Justice Thomas, is he the dark-skinned fellow that married the white lady? I'm just curious. So, my heterosexual request, born in 1978, to want an Rh negative mating and breeding partner was denied by some chair in some fictitious unit that oversees public safety and whatever else it does. I'm just curious. I want to make sure I get the facts really clear as far as motive goes.
Presumptive right in this country to walk around the streets with a gun, and that is something that is certainly antithetical to Mayor Adams and Governor Hochul, but they knew which way this debate was going ever since oral arguments in this case back in February, and ever since then they have been working behind the scenes on a potential response. We expect Governor Hochul now to call a special session of the legislature so that New York can rewrite its licensing regime. The concurring opinion from Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Roberts said that licensing is okay to carry a gun, just nothing discretionary, meaning demonstrating a proper cause like New York does now. And that means that no longer will anyone here have to explain themselves why they have a particular need to carry a gun outside the home. So that's going to need to be rewritten, and Mayor Adams and the governor are also looking at what sensitive locations might be appropriate to restrict guns. Think about the subway, Yankee Stadium. The governor says all of New York City should be declared a sensitive location, but that seems out of bounds now because of this opinion.
You know, you bring up an...
Really? So again, my personal safety and security in needing a sensitive area of security is what? Someone's negotiating that. Well, if you were going to trap me here, wouldn't that be a requirement? Based on what's at stake.
An interesting point, because when you first read the opinion, it seems like they're restricting the permit process. But, you know, talk to me a little bit more about going into public places such as the Supreme Court itself, or going into, let's say, the Capitol building in Washington, D.C.
Courts have always said that it's inappropriate to carry a gun inside a courthouse, and that does not change with this opinion. And in fact, during oral arguments, we heard Chief Justice...
That's really interesting, because in family business, which is Rh negative, and whatever it is that they do at that level, being that there's more Rh positive than there are Rh negative, and Rh negative have to look out not only for themselves but others by extension of their own utmost sensitive security. Wouldn't this theoretical body at this point with this justice system, who's already been seated when the event occurred in my real breeding season, with now being sent to some crazy donkey and everything going wrong, that would seem like a one bullet hole was already, and it's been exsanguinating on the floor, waiting for somebody to recognize the kid that was on the floor and the system that has one gigantic gaping chasm in it. I don't know why you would let such a decisive and dangerous visual whatever happen. But here we are, because it happened before I got here.
Justice Roberts say he could understand why there might be certain places where it would be inappropriate to carry a gun. But just because people gather in a certain place, the court said, doesn't necessarily make it a sensitive location. So New York is now going to have to go back and figure out what would constitute a sensitive location where a gun should be off limits, and then make sure it's in line with this opinion. I just talked to one state senator, Todd Kaminsky, who represents Long Beach. He said that the lawmakers will try to go right up to the line that the court will allow without going over it.
Aaron, we're expecting.
Long Beach is in 516. It's in a Nassau count, just so we're clear. I went from, and when my body wound up on Nick Santarelli's front lawn in Oyster Bay, it was a 516 area code. And the kids at school, like Rourke, Studick, the rest of them, whatever's in the yearbook that I used to actually rollerblade with and kept me safe, like didn't even attempt like inappropriateness. They'll tell you, again, whatever happened, it was as innocent as trying to meet up to learn how to rollerblade from a couple of people who knew how, except it was with a different crowd. And then it was never spoken of. Not in my house, not at school. It just went like it never happened. And here's the beginning of that story, just to recap.
Writing for the court's conservative majority, as Shirley said a moment ago, the vote was 6-3. Justice Thomas writing that the Constitution guarantees an individual's right to carry a handgun in self-defense outside of the home. Of course, the impact will be far-reaching in New York and other states that required people to demonstrate a special need, a particular reason to carry a firearm. The concealed carry license has been very difficult to get in New York, yet that has now been struck down. However, state and local registration and background checks can remain in place. The court is not touching that aspect of it. What's more, the court has kept the door open for exceptions that would allow localities to restrict gun possession in certain unspecified sensitive places. Now that's vague, but experts say it could include sports arenas, maybe the New York City subway. Local elected officials are already scrutinizing the ruling to see how its impact can be managed or limited. But reaction here has been harsh. Governor Kathy Hochul speaking late this morning.
Shocking.
And I can already see by the way that the word supreme was built, S-U, there are non-family members sitting in robes. There's also definitely one that sticks out more than the rest that is not Rh negative for certain without even needing a blood test. That's how clear it is. But yet it's been sitting there functioning in the larger schematic of building this nation hand in hand in partnership with the gods that fund things. And here we are, somewhere in the middle. Star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.